Hi everyone, this is Gayathri and I am entering my 4th year as a biotech major. I am back at it again and we are going to be going over the classes in this very last STEM class reviews video. For starters, thank you so much for the love from the past 2 videos. These were the videos that got the most number of views for me, so I really appreciate that, and I'm glad to see that you guys have been finding it helpful. In case this is your first time checking out STEM class reviews, this is just a couple of videos that I've made going over the different STEM classes I took as a biotech major, but I'm also very well aware that the STEM classes I took are very popular for a lot of different majors, so I thought that I could kind of go into great detail about how these classes work and how to do well. In this STEM class reviews video, I will be going over the Physics 7 series, BIS 101, 102, which is the Biochem series, and then MPB 101, which is Systemic Physiology. So if you are going to be taking any of these classes now or in the future, I would stay tuned. So the way that I'm going to structure this video, no different than the past 2 if you watch them, but I'll just be going quarter after quarter, going over the class that I took. For each class, I will be going over the class content, workload difficulty, which I'll rank 1 to 5, 5 being most difficult, class difficulty, which I'll also rank from 1 to 5, and then finally any general advice I have. Like my past 2 videos, I do have notes, but I'll be honest, the trauma stuck in my head, so I won't be looking as much. Also, another thing, I know for a fact this video is going to be just as long as my other 2 videos, so please check out the timestamps in the description box, skip to wherever you need to go. And with all of that said, let's get started with my fall quarter. So fall quarter, I took Physics 7A and BIS 101. We'll start with Physics 7A. Physics 7 in general at UC Davis has a bad rep, and that bad rep is for good reason. Class content, kinematics, thermodynamics, energy, just super riveting stuff, I know. All that means is knowing the speed of a ball, what energy the ball holds, and whether the ball is melting. Another thing that I'll mention is for those of you who took AP Physics, I took AP Physics in high school. I'm so happy to say it was completely useless. If you didn't take AP Physics, don't worry, like it does not help whatsoever. Workload difficulty, I gave it a 2 out of 5. Here's the thing, Physics 7 at UC Davis has a crazy class structure, okay? I'm sure that you've been scrolling through Reddit, going on Rate My Professor, trying to figure out how this works. So let me break it down for you. You have 1 lecture a week that is led by the professor, and this 1 lecture is about 1 hour and 20 minutes long at absolutely ungodly hours. I'm sure that when you were signing up for this class, you noticed that the 2 lecture times are at 7:30 a.m. and then 9 a.m. So we have this 1 lecture that's 1 hour, 20 minutes per week, and that's led by the professor. But then you have Physics DL. DL stands for discussion/lab, and you have this twice a week for 2 hours and 20 minutes each, and these discussions are led by the TA. What does that mean? The TA is the one doing most of the teaching. These discussion labs, it's not really like a lab, it's more like a discussion. You're basically put into this table with, I would say, 4 to 5 other people. You just do all of these activities that are in the discussion manual. Your only homework for this class is what are called FNTs. So FNTs stand for 4 next times. You go home, you work on these problems, and then you go to your next discussion and you spend the first portion of the discussion going over these questions with your table mates. And yes, you're not gonna know what you're doing at all, because these discussion questions are most of the time it's topics that you just barely went over in discussion, and it's you're kind of primed to learn about the topic first on your own before you go to discussion. Even during the summer, people want to rev up their cars. It's not that deep. The purpose of the 4 next times is literally giving you questions on topics that you're not going to be super familiar with because they barely went over it in class. And then you go to the next DL and discuss it and just try to figure out the content that way. The reason why the teachers structure the class like this is they say it's for active learning. The only thing that was actively going on was my brain shutting down. Like, physics is already difficult, and then if you're putting most of the teaching and learning on us, it's just traumatizing. So that was the workload difficulty. And then we have class difficulty 5 out of 5, okay? This is the first class out of my 3 years of making these videos that I have given a 5 out of 5 ranking. This class will crush your pre-med dreams. I'm just kidding. I really hope that doesn't happen for you, but there will be times throughout the quarter where you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know the speed of a ball. Like, maybe I don't know the human body. Either way, yeah, this class is insane. I'm telling you right now, it's harder than OChem. Imagine a class where, like, even if you know the material, the way things are structured is all working against you. Right now, I'm going to be going over the grading policy of the class because that plays a huge role in why the class is difficult. Besides the 1 lecture a week and the 2 discussions, there are 4 main things that make up your grade. Number 1 are quizzes, then your final exam, then what's called a discussion grade, and then your F&T grade. So we'll first start by going over quizzes. In most other classes you've taken in college, you usually have 2 midterms and 1 final, right? In Physics 7, instead of having 2 midterms, you have 5 quizzes that are dispersed about every other week. Each of these quizzes are worth 10 points, and you are given 20 minutes to work on them. And no, you will never have enough time. I'm laughing because I'm just coping. And here's the best part, your quizzes are going to be all or nothing. So on these quizzes, you're going to have 3 ways that the question is introduced to you. Number 1 is multiple choice questions. So if you're given a multiple choice question, there are 3 ways that you can answer it, okay? Number 1 is you circle the right answer, you get full credit. Number 2 is you can circle 2 answers for that multiple choice, and if one of them is correct, then you will get half credit. And then third option is if you circle 2 of them that are both incorrect, then you don't get any points. Or if you circle 1 and it's incorrect, you don't get any points. So that's multiple choice. And then the second way that a question will show up for you on a quiz is select all that apply. Let's say you have a question and there are 5 options, and then it's like select all that apply, check off the boxes that you think are correct. If, let's say, there are 2 answers that are correct and you checkbox both of them, then great, you get full points. If you checkbox only one of them, then you will get points for that question. But let's say you check off a box for 1 correct answer and then 1 incorrect answer, you will get the points for this, but then you will get points taken off for selecting something incorrect. And they do this so that students don't end up checking every box, and so like they're guaranteed to get the question right. Yeah, I know, evil, right? And then the final way that a question can show up for you on a quiz is all or nothing free response. So it's basically a question where you have to work out the answer, but then what they'll do is they'll give you a box, and in that box you have to put just the final answer you got. And if that final answer is incorrect, you lose points for the entire question. They don't care anymore about the work you put in. You're never gonna get partial credit for just writing equations anymore. I know, you guys are so lucky. If you ever need to come back to this video and trauma dump, please do so. Like, this is a safe space for you. So those are the quizzes. And like I said, you are given 5 quizzes. Each of them are worth 10 points, although some teachers will make them worth 20 points. And the averages for these quizzes are always like 40 to 60%. The grade for each quiz gets curved. Instead of at the end of the quarter, you getting your whole final grade curved, it's like for each quiz, each exam, there is a curve that is applied. And like I said, the reason why I was saying before that like sometimes the class structure works against you is the fact that instead of having 2 midterms, you have 5 quizzes, each worth anywhere from 10 to 20 points. That means like only 50 to 100 points are going towards that midterm percentage. Your quizzes are worth anywhere from 35 to 45% of your grade, and I will get into that later. Those are the quizzes. And then you have the final exam. The final exam is like any other college exam, so it's 2 hours long, cumulative. Your final exam gets curved individually as well. And then finally, you have what's called a discussion grade. You're required to attend discussion, okay? And then you're required to do your F&Ts. But then what can end up happening is if you participate very well in class, your TA can give you an extra percentage. There are 5 potential discussion grades you can get: -3%, -1%, 0%, 1%, 3%. Majority of the class will get a 0%. This just means that, you showed up to class, you did your F&Ts, so your physics grade, which is based on your final quizzes and all of that, is going to stay the same. But if you are a student that has gone above and beyond in your discussion, meaning that you participated, you asked a lot of questions, you did a really good job discussing things with your table, you could get either a 1% or 3% boost to your grade. So let's say I have an 85% in the class after taking the final, but then my TA thought that I did a really good job. So in that case, he or she could give me 3%, and my 85% in the class will move up to an 88%. So basically going from a B to a B+. Now you also have -3% and -1%, right? This is if you're like a terrible student, like you're causing a ruckus, you have the maturity of a 5-year-old. Like, I don't know what you would have to do to get a -1 or a -3%, but hypothetically, if that happened, let's say I had an 85%, my grade would drop to an 82% or an 84%. But what I'll tell you is that every TA is only allowed to pick like a few students to give that 1% and 3% to. Besides your discussion grade, your final, and your quizzes, you also have your F&T grade. So what I forgot to mention is that your F&Ts are just for completion. So don't worry about getting things correct, because like I said, half of the questions you get on that F&T, you're not going to know how to do it. So it's okay if you just put in a good effort and then, just submit it. But ultimately, why I gave this class a 5 out of 5 is, for starters, they're putting most of the teaching responsibility on the TAs, which in my opinion is not fair. Like, you're a professor, you literally have credentials to teach students, but then you're telling the TAs to do majority of the teaching. And even then, some TAs are not going to teach well, and then all they'll tell you is like, okay, you're on your own, this class is about active learning, just do a bunch of practice problems, whatever. And even that's not helpful. So not only is the teaching method skewed, but also this is one of those classes where you could do 100 practice problems and still not know what you're doing on the actual quiz. And so a strategy a lot of kids used to do in the past is they would just write random equations and then get like half the credit. And because students were doing that, the professors were like, okay, let's change things up, let's make their life worse, and let's make the quizzes all or nothing. And it's like, none of the material you're giving us is helping us on the actual quiz. And then on top of that, you're telling us that you're given 20 minutes, do all or nothing. If you select the wrong answer, you get points taken off. Like, that's why we were seeing percentages like in the 40s for quiz averages. And this definitely felt like one of those classes where no matter what you do, it's so difficult to get your grade up. Like, you have to be some other level of genius to be doing well on the quizzes or exam or whatever. Now what I'm gonna go over is the cumulative grading policy. So please listen up, this is super, super important. This is how it's been for a long time in the entire physics series. There are 2 ways that your grade can be calculated. So the first way that your grade can be distributed is where your final is worth 55%, your 5 quizzes altogether worth 40%, your F&Ts worth 5%, and then finally your additional discussion grade. So basically your quiz, final, and F&Ts are all worth 100%, and then your discussion grade will add or subtract from there on. The second way that your grade can be calculated is where your final is worth 60% of your grade, and then the top 4 out of your 5 quizzes worth 35% of your grade. F&T's still worth 5%, and then your discussion grade added and subtracted from there. So what these 2 methods are basically saying is, if your average on the quizzes is better than the final, then your quizzes are given more weight. But if you performed better on the final than in your quizzes, you will have your lowest quiz score dropped, and then your final will be worth more. But if you notice one thing, is that your final is worth over 50% of your grade. And what's so concerning about that is you could be doing so well on your quizzes, and if you bomb that final, your grade can tank. What makes this class difficult is that sometimes it feels like no matter what you do, you're just not getting a good score. Like, I'm sorry to say this, but no one should be getting quiz scores like this. Like, this is ungodly, okay? I don't think that I'm a super smart person, but I know this is not real. So now we're gonna go into general advice of how to do well in this class, okay? Number one, take physics at a community college, okay? I am so sorry. I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but my own major advisor told me when I was a freshman, if you could take physics at a community college, do it. And I really try not to hate on the departments here, okay? I try to be unbiased, but it's truly unacceptable the way they do things here. I felt like I had to sell my soul to get a good grade in the class. Woodland Community College is like what, 10-15 minutes away? And then like if you have any community colleges nearby in your town, just take this class over the summer. And if you're a pre-health major and you're worried about whether like med schools, nursing schools, PA schools will like community college classes, if you want to do this, you can literally call the school and ask them like, what are your guys' thoughts on community college classes? But most of them don't care. If you take one prerequisite at a community college, just do it. Because in my opinion, your education is more important. You need to advocate for what you believe is a good education. And I'm sorry to say this, if you take physics at UC Davis, you will truly be on your own. I really felt like I was just thrown into a dark tunnel and it's like, figure it out. No one should have to feel like that. Even though it's a public university and there's already this assumption that you're going to take more initiative in your education, the level that they structure the physics classes here is just unacceptable. So I genuinely mean this when I say if you can take physics at a community college, just do that. Second piece of advice, please do well in OChem. I'm so sorry, but you need to have good padding before you take this class. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to be practical. Like taking physics, I was like, I really wish I did better in OChem. That way I didn't have to stress so much to get a good grade in this series. I try to have an internal locus of control, okay? I'm someone who's like, Gayathri, you really need to take initiative. You really need to like ignore the fact that you don't have the best professor or the best TA or the best discussion, whatever it is. I have been doing that for the past 3 years, and I promise you this is a class where the structure will work against you. It's not that you're dumb. It's not that you won't be a good doctor, nurse, PA, a good like researcher if you're interested in that. It's just genuinely the way that they format the quizzes especially is messed up. But all of that aside, okay, let's say your community college nearby doesn't offer physics. Let's say your OChem grade was not so cute, not so mindful, not so demure. How are you gonna go about doing well in physics, okay? Regardless of if your quiz grades are good or not, it's the final that's going to determine your grade. So make sure that you give tons and tons of importance to that. Now, as far as tangible advice goes, check out Casey Davis's YouTube channel. So Casey Davis is a tutor at AETC and he has workshops from COVID era going over like different physics problems, physics concepts. He is an excellent teacher. Better than that, if you can go and attend his workshops in person, I would do that because honestly, I feel like that's more helpful than office hours. I never discovered his channel until I took Physics 7C, but he's truly a great teacher. I will show the YouTube channel somewhere here. I'll also link it in the description, but please, 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 please use this resource. Your tuition money goes towards supporting the AETC, so you might as well use what you're paying for. And like I said, if you can attend his workshops, I would do that too. I'm going to show like a photo of the website and then I'll link that down below as well. And that goes over the times of when these workshops occur. And he has videos for Physics 7A, 7B, and 7C, so definitely check that out. Second thing I would do is to check out the Physics Angels YouTube channel. Physics Angels is also UC Davis centered. I don't exactly know who runs the channel, unfortunately, but she does a great job of going over tons of different physics practice problems. So if you have a quiz coming up, I would definitely go to her channel and then check out the questions that she works on. I'm also going to show a photo of it here and then link it down in the description. This is great because on her channel, she will go over practice problems that are very much similar to the practice quizzes that the teachers will give you, but then also more problems on top of that. Third thing is to do all the practice quizzes that the teachers post on Canvas. No, the quizzes are not representative at all, okay? I'm telling you right now, not a single quiz that you work on is going to be like the actual quiz you get. But the reason why you want to do tons of physics problems is to get the confidence to look at a problem you've never seen before and then solve it out. So I used to do this a lot, where I would use the Physics Angels channel and then also the practice quizzes my teacher would give. Physics Angels, I used it as a way to kind of slow down and work through the problem when I was first trying to learn. But then when it was nearing a quiz time, I would print out the quizzes and then give myself 20 minutes to work on it. And again, this is just to help you get in the mindset of like, I am timed and I may not have time to get through every question. So let me just figure out a strategy. You know, maybe if I'm not able to figure out a question in this many seconds, and yes, you only get seconds, move on to the next one. Third thing, if you have a really good TA, live at their office hours, okay? And I'm saying TA specifically because I felt like TA office hours were the most helpful. Most people go to the professor office hours, but I feel like when you're in TA office hours, you get a more one-on-one interaction. Some TAs are better than the professors. So if your TA is not good themselves, then I would definitely check in with your friends, check in with other students, like who's the good TA around. Check on Discord. Discord is also a really good resource. I didn't mention that, but Discord is great because it's like a really good trauma bonding group. Like you all can get together and spill out your frustrations about this class, and some people on the Discord are really smart too, so I think sometimes they do review sessions on there, so I would check that out. But you can also ask on Discord who are the good TAs and then try to get to their office hours. But then final thing, I was that annoying kid who raised their hand in discussion and asked questions every 5 seconds. So I'm not joking when I say you need to be that student. I know when you get to the middle of the quarter, you're going to feel lazy. You're going to feel demotivated. You're going to be like, oh my God, I have like a 6 out of 10 on every quiz. Like, how am I gonna get my grade up? I know you're gonna reach that mindset, and I'm telling you right now, your discussion grade can help you so much. So please raise your hand, ask questions, participate in your group. Even if you have to ask a dumb question, like what is melting, what is boiling, what is water, like just ask it, because your TA needs to know who you are. I will be frank with you. Some TAs will be stringent. Some TAs may even say, I'm not going to give out 1% or 3% to anyone because everyone in the class participated. That could potentially happen, but you still want to take that chance on yourself. Make sure that you're really putting yourself out there. I know it's going to feel cringy. I know it's going to feel annoying, but at the end of the day, you're going to thank yourself. And then final piece of advice. Now's the time to get spiritual. If you know the girlies who've got the crystals, the manifestation journal, okay, the chakra meditation, I don't know, you need to get friends with them, because this class is gonna make you believe in higher forces beyond gravity and what else, tension force. Like I promise you, this class is gonna make you just like get on your knees and be like, God help me. Sometimes taking this class is so uncertain. If you're not doing well as you had hoped, it says nothing about who you are as a student. It says nothing about your capabilities of a good future. It's just the way that they structure the class here is messed up. I've never been this opinionated before. It's very refreshing. It's very cathartic. Okay, I take it back. One actual genuine final piece of advice: don't have this attitude of like, I'll never use this stuff again. Because that can actually lead into a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're thinking to yourself like, okay, I'm never going to use these physics formulas again, so why should I even try? And then you'll reach a point where you're so desperate to get a good grade on the final, and then you don't get that grade, and then you're going to feel depressed. Like, from the beginning, when you walk into this class, I don't care what your future plans are, gaslight yourself into thinking that you're a nuclear scientist. Walk into this class being like, I want to learn about why melting occurs. I want to know the speed of a ball when it rolls down a ramp. And I know it's going to feel so frustrating, but it doesn't help you at all if you have this attitude of like, I'm never gonna use this stuff, why should I even bother? All of this advice that I stated will be exactly applicable to physics 7B and 7C. So I will remind everyone there when I go over physics 7B, 7C, but definitely refer to all of this advice that I spoke about here. You know, I always say it's a universal experience. Being a STEM student, taking physics 7 here, just know you're going to feel on top of the world when you're done with the class. I take it back. When you're done with the class, you'll actually feel like a shell of a human being, but then give it some time, give it a few months, and then you'll be like, oh my God, like I made it through this. For 30 minutes, I've been ranting about physics. So let's move on to BIS 101. So BIS 101 is the first class in the biochemistry series. And before I delve into this, people have two options usually. You can take BIS 101 and 102 or BIS 105. And BIS 105 is the condensed version. I would suggest if you are interested in grad school, take BIS 101 and 102 because it's a lot more thorough. Especially if you're a pre-med and you're going to take the MCAT, BIS 101 and 102 are very helpful. Class content for BIS 101, you'll be going over proteins, amino acids, different lab techniques, and then buffers and titrations. I know like the prerequisite to taking this class is OChem, but in my opinion, I felt like BIS 101 was not as bad, but I'll go into more detail with that. Workload difficulty, I gave it a 0 out of 5 because when I took BIS 101, we had absolutely 0 homework. And usually this is the pattern you see with upper division classes. It's also kind of a terrible thing because then your grade is just dependent on exams. But to me, I like that there wasn't as much homework. I don't know, it depends. Depends on how you view it. But yeah, 0 out of 5 workload difficulty, just no homework. Class difficulty, a 4 out of 5. But if you're taking BIS 101 with Dr. Hilt, that's gonna be a 6 out of 5 for you, okay? Dr. Hilt's class, I'll pray for you. Okay, so when I took BIS 101, we only had 2 midterms and 1 final. I forgot to go over the class structure as well. So it's just 2 or 3 lectures a week, no discussion, no lab, nothing like that. Our actual exams were a mix of free response and multiple choice. So free response is usually for titration calculations, and then multiple choice is usually for everything else. But again, that really depends on the teacher. I gave this class difficulty a 4 out of 5 or like 6 out of 5 for Hilt because a lot of these topics are like you've never seen it before. Even though OChem is a prerequisite, it's not really like things that you know super well. Like for example, our titration calculations and buffer calculations, I didn't know how to do those well. So I had to do so many practice problems to the point where I was seeing titrations in my dreams. Another thing is that you have to memorize the amino acids. I had BIS 101 with Dr. Hilt, so you really do have to know anything and everything about amino acids, but I'm actually really happy we have to do that. If you're going to take the MCAT, you need to know amino acids inside and out, so might as well do it in BIS 101. Now, when it comes to curving, the class can be curved depending on the teacher. Obviously, with any class you take in college, it has to be curved if majority of the class is going to fail or something. So my class was curved, depends on the teacher. General advice, besides the usual going to office hours, doing practice exams and so on, a big change I made this quarter was spamming Piazza. I was that annoying anonymous person who was posting like 3 posts per night at 1 a.m. and I wish I had done this earlier though. No one uses Piazza, but it's actually a really useful resource because what I would end up doing is if I had a question while studying, I would write it on a notepad and then just wait for the next office hours. By that point, I would have really forgotten what I was going through when writing that question. But when you use Piazza as you're studying, you can just stop what you're doing, go on Piazza, type the question. It's posted and it's on there forever, so you can always go back and refer to it. The teacher is the one who responds to those questions directly. To me, I found it super helpful, and I would do the same if I were you. And then second thing is to really use flashcards and diagrams and stuff. Like I know for amino acids, I made a chart going over like these are the basic amino acids, these are the acidic ones, these are the hydrophobic ones, and I was using that like well throughout the year. Honestly, I don't have really like unique general advice besides office hours, doing practice exams, going on Piazza, but otherwise BIS 101, it really depends on the teacher you have. In my opinion, biochem is not as bad as gen chem or OChem, but everyone is different. That was a really nice long rant session for fall quarter. Now we're gonna move on to winter quarter, where I took physics 7B and BIS 102. For physics 7B, it was again super interesting material. Like we were going over forces, fluid mechanics, electricity. For class difficulty, I would give it a 4.99999 out of 5 instead of a 5 out of 5, just because I think a lot of people felt that physics 7B was slightly easier than physics 7A. So take advantage of that. but everything else about the class, as far as class structure, quizzes, final, grading policy, is exactly the same throughout the series. Physics 7 is a series where no matter which teacher you have, they keep the grading, they keep the structure consistent. If you are jumping right here to Physics 7B and you haven't checked out Physics 7A, I would definitely go back there, go over the grading policy in great detail, and then same thing with class advice. I feel like the class advice applies here. You know, use Casey Davis's YouTube channel, Physics Angels, office hours, discussion grade, all of that. Next we have BIS 102. So BIS 102 is specifically focused on metabolism. So the class content for BIS 102 is like going over how carbohydrates, fat, protein, nucleic acids, how all these different materials are built and broken down in our bodies, and also photosynthesis and stuff. So workload difficulty, again, a 0 out of 5. When I took BIS 102, we didn't have any homework. Although, like I said, some teachers are different. For class difficulty, I gave this a 4 out of 5, but again, if you have Dr. Hilt, I'm gonna have to give it a 7 out of 5. From what I've heard, he makes you guys memorize every little thing in the pathway and write it out from memory. If you have Dr. Fiend, I had Dr. Fiend, I would say like a 3.5 out of 5 because he has open note exams. Maybe not 3.5 out of 5. I feel like that's too low. Maybe like a 3.999. But anyway, similar to BIS 101, at least when I took BIS 102, it was same thing, you know, 2 midterms, 1 final. My teacher had all multiple choice exams, but again, different teachers could have different formats. As far as like class structure and like lectures and stuff, same thing, 2 or 3 lectures a week. I will say if you have Dr. Fiend, I don't know if he's teaching this next year, but if you do have him, he has Piazza quizzes that you'll do, but they're like in class, you can talk to the people around you and all that. I'm not going into great detail because I feel like there's a lot of biochem teachers, so they're going to do things differently. General advice, draw out those pathways. So this class, it really doesn't require flashcards as much as just getting a huge piece of paper and like using your own hand, just writing out everything. Like, oh, this is glucose and it's going to become glucose 6-phosphate and then fructose 6-phosphate, and you know, just drawing out all those pathways and then really going over it. Like I said, if you're going to take the MCAT, you're going to need to know these metabolic pathways well. I think for me, it was kind of a disadvantage to have open note because I never bothered to truly learn the pathways and understand why certain molecules go through different things. Definitely recommend just taking out that diagram, making that work. And then similar to what I said for BIS 101, spam Piazza, don't be shy, don't feel ashamed. And then your usual doing practice exams, going to office hours, and so on and so forth. I was really quick for winter quarter. Now we're gonna go on to spring quarter, where I took Physics 7C and then MPB 101. So Physics 7C, the class content was going over waves, so like light waves, sound waves, and then electric fields, magnetism, reflection, refraction. What else? I think that was it. Maybe there was more. Honestly, I think it's repressed at this point. This is gonna sound whack. I actually liked Physics 7C content more, but it was genuinely the most difficult class in the series. I think it's like one of the most difficult classes to pass in UC Davis, so just food for thought. So yeah, I would say for class difficulty, like 5.11111 out of 5. No, not a 5.11, probably like 5.5. It was pretty difficult. Everything else though, like I said, as far as class advice, class structure, grading policy, exactly the same as Physics 7A, 7B. So please go and check the Physics 7A timestamp in case you're still unsure. One thing I'll just tell you though, you are going to be so happy when that final is done. You're going to be walking out of that lecture hall, maybe feeling depressed, wondering like, did I bomb that? But you'll be so proud that you finished the series here. I truly think that you will become a different human being after physics. I would tell you that you'll become stronger, but I think it's more like you'll be trying to heal. And then the final class I will be going over is MPB 101, which is systemic physiology. I had to take this class because I'm an animal biotech major, but I would say if you're pre-health of any kind, definitely take this class, unless you're an MPB major, because then you have to take like the 1-year series. One thing I will say, if you're going to take the MCAT, please make sure that you take this class first. This really shocked correct me, but I always used to think that the BIS2 series was important for the MCAT, but it's not. MPB 101 is so crucial. It makes up like, I would say 60% of the bio material. So definitely take this class if you're planning on taking the MCAT. I'm not sure about the exams for like dental school or PA school, but this class was super useful. So class content was very condensed. We went over the physiology of the nervous system, muscular system, cardiovascular, respiratory, endocrine, reproductive, and then renal systems. Hopefully I'm not missing anything. Workload difficulty, I gave it a 3 out of 5. So this really depends on your teacher. But my teacher had 2 extra assignments. One of them was called Discord participation, where everyone had to join this class Discord. And then on the Discord, you're supposed to ask 10 questions and then answer 10 questions. And then he had another assignment where we had to like make a study tool. So like it could be flashcards or a crossword puzzle. And then if you didn't want to do either of those, you could do like a report on a research article. So I'm not going into too much detail on these because I really don't think every professor does that. So that's for workload difficulty, but I don't know, maybe some teachers don't have any assignments because again, this is an upper division class. So as far as class difficulty goes, I am giving this a 4 out of 5 because you are going to be having lecture 5 times a week. No class that I've ever taken has had us do 5 lectures a week, and in every single lecture you will be learning something new. The reason why they did this was apparently they wanted to kind of simulate medical school. They wanted us getting used to like the fast rate of like content exposure. So definitely lecture 5 days a week. It adds up. It's a lot to keep track of. There's no discussion or lab for this class, although there is an optional discussion you could take. In my opinion, you don't really need to take it, but some people do that because they find it more helpful. You totally can, but for me, I was fine. I would only sign up for the discussion if you need an extra unit. The people who I asked who took the discussion didn't find it helpful, but again, go at your own discretion. As far as testing goes, when I took it, we had 3 midterms, 1 final, and then one of the midterms were dropped. There's usually not a curve for the class, although my teacher was really nice. He gave everyone 1% extra. Like I said, class difficulty 4 out of 5 just because it's not that the content is difficult, it's just having to keep up with the material. Now I'll be going into general advice. I know it sounds kind of obvious, but you really need to go to lecture every single day. If you don't get into that habit at the beginning of the quarter, it's going to be a Friday night. You're going to want to go out to a party at 8 p.m., but then you're going to look at your Canvas and see that you have 5 lectures to go over. You're going to hate your life. Like, just don't do that. Please just go to lecture every day. And then when you come back home on that same day, make flashcards. In my case, I never missed a single day of lecture, but there were some days where I would not make flashcards of the lectures. It would be like 2 or 3 days later and I would have 30 flashcards to write. So on the day of that lecture, write the flashcard. And honestly, this is why this class is 5 units. Like, if you remembered taking BIS 2 or the Chem 2 series, then you know what it was like, how you had so much time, or like you had to put in so much energy into that class. MPB 101 is no different. On the note of flashcards, definitely all you need to do well in this class is flashcards. I knew some people who were like annotating their lecture slides and like rereading their lecture slides, but that's not going to help you as much as the active recall you get from flashcards. Anki is a really good software. This is actually something that med school students use when studying because it implements spaced repetition. In case you get a flashcard incorrect, it will show you that flashcard after like 1 minute or 10 minutes or whatever it is. So you get really good at learning that material. But there's also Quizlet. If you want to be that person who makes handwritten flashcards, that's great. You can do that too. But at the end of the day, just all you need is flashcards. Go to lecture every day, make flashcards, study the flashcards every day. You're going to do excellent in the class. Like, everyone who I knew who implemented these tactics had no less than a 95% in the course. And in my opinion, I really liked MPB 101. Like, this was probably my favorite STEM class just because it's so interesting learning about everything the human body goes through. And I felt like the content wasn't difficult. It was just having the discipline to go over it. That leads into my third piece of advice, which is you have to study every day. Like, I'm sorry to tell you this, but every single freaking day, you need to leave out 1 hour to go over MPB. When I took MPB, we had our 3rd midterm a week before our final. And during that last week, our teacher went through the entire renal system. And so when it came down to the final, I only had enough time to go over the renal system. But for me, that wasn't an issue because I had already studied all the material from the past and I already felt comfortable with that material that I was like, I don't really need to do super strong review of that. If you're someone who doesn't diligently study for this course, you're gonna have 1,000 flashcards to go through before the final, and like I said, you're gonna hate your life. This is definitely one class where just having that discipline, having the organizational skills is so crucial. It's not like physics where you have to really like understand these difficult topics. It's just learning the material, having it engraved in your head, so that when the final comes around, you don't have to stress with studying so much. And then there's the usual advice of going to office hours and doing practice exams and stuff. I know in my past 2 videos, I really stressed office hours and practice exams, but I feel like it doesn't do any help to just keep saying that every video. I would just hope that everyone knows practice exams and office hours are so crucial for doing well in any and every course. Like I said, I loved MPB 101. I wasn't planning on taking it until my senior year, but I'm really happy I took the class. Like when you finally have that spark of like, oh my God, I'm really into this course, you're going to want to put in that time and effort yourself. But honestly, even if you don't feel that spark with MPB, that's totally fine, because it just comes down to pushing past the feeling of like procrastination. And one thing I'll tell you right now, you're gonna have tons of flashcards to study for this class. Every single day I was making 20 flashcards. So just to prepare you in advance, you're gonna be having 300 flashcards to study for every midterm. But if you engrave that knowledge in your head, you won't have to stress about it when the final comes around. Oh my gosh, you guys, with that, we're done. Like I said, this is the last STEM class reviews video. Originally, when I started making these videos, I wanted to do it because I remember being a freshman and like freaking out over how to do well in these classes. And it felt like whenever you went on Reddit or Rate My Professor, it's like people were just saying the same things, or they were just saying like, oh, this teacher sucks, this class sucks. But it's like, can you give me detailed advice? Like, what resources should I use to do well? When I was making these videos, by no means did I think that like I had cracked the code. My intention of making these videos was to just help you guys out there, and that we can get more resources out there going into more detail about how do these classes work, what do you need to succeed. Reflecting back on it, it's going to be a lot of hard work, okay? I went over very difficult classes in these past 3 videos. Like I went over Gen Chem, OChem, Physics, and like these classes are gonna test your patience, they're gonna test your resilience. When I was pulling quiz scores of like 2 out of 10s, I was like, maybe Gayathri grad school is not gonna work out. Like maybe let's go to Indeed.com. Like let's see which biotech internships are out there. But it just comes down to pushing past that dejection. Not just the dejection, like you're gonna have those days where you're like, all of this is so much hard work, like why am I putting myself through all of this? But once you're done with it all, you will feel so proud. I was just hoping that with these videos you guys could find some good guidance with it. At least I hope it was good guidance. In case you were looking for something more, please comment down below. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for the love and support for the past few videos. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this Her Campus YouTube channel. And then also follow us at Her Campus at UCD on Instagram. Good luck with the rest of your year. Make sure to practice self-care. Yeah, with that, I'll tune off. Bye.